Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor.More. We're at the commercial, kind of industrial property where we've had some issues with the county and random trucks and cars being dropped off here too. So we'll talk about that. We have an update on this property. Some progress has been made. Still some frustrations and different stuff going on with it too. Hopefully eventually we'll get it all sorted out and then I can decide if I want to keep it or sell it or what I want to do with it. Who knows? But we got some issues with the county not liking what we're doing here and all that. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted there because the guy walking over, that was his truck. So we'll talk about that in a second. Here's what the property looked like when I first bought it after we'd cleaned it up a bunch, just to give you an idea of the condition of the property. So I've told this story before, but I'll tell it to you again really quickly so I can get some people up to date who don't know the story on this property. I paid $865,000 for it, June of 2022. It was a divorce situation. The seller didn't have any idea about what was going on with the property. And I got almost no information, no help at all. And my Supra's in that video too. And it was a great deal, but it came with some difficulties, which a lot of great deals do. So I cleaned it up. I rented the property to a diesel mechanic who rents this shop right here. I rented the other spot behind me where my Supra was before to a detailer. And then eventually we rented the building to my left over there to a church and then a storage area in the back to just a guy for storage. The zoning allows all of those uses, no problem whatsoever. The issues came when the county started contacting me saying I had illegal uses on this property or had some issues dating from a site plan in 2014. So basically, the previous owner had done a site plan to turn this into a truck wash facility. He wanted to add some concrete, put a truck wash in. In order to do that, he gave certain uses to the buildings, agreed to put in a French drain, agreed to grade and either pave or put in crushed asphalt along the whole property, put in a concrete wall around some septics, and do some landscaping stuff. Well, from that 2014 site plan, he put in the French drain, and that was about it. He never did the truck washout. He never did the grading. He never did the landscaping. He did rent this to a diesel mechanic, and he rented the other space to an event center. I knew that before I had bought it. And so the county came along and said, yes, you can have this diesel mechanic. That's allowed for the site plan. But the church cannot be there because that's an event space, and that's not allowed. And I said, well, it was an event space before with the previous owner, and they kind of ignored that and said, well, it's not allowed. You can only have a grocery store / retail space in there. So I've had an illegal tenant in there per the county for a while now. I've been working with them. I've had multiple meetings with the county, and some were good, some were bad. We had some really bad meetings. I brought in an engineer to help work on this, talked to an architect to help work on this to try and get things settled. And we're making progress now, but it's been very slow. And so there's been a few cases where my engineer kind of wanted to quit, not work on it because it was some of the requirements were so crazy. Then they got to be less crazy. It's been a weird situation. So basically, the county wants me to revise the site plan, redo it, get the building where the church is completely changed up to code for a church, which I guess is completely different from a grocery store retail space, and then do the landscaping, do the grading, do the gravel or crushed asphalt, recycled asphalt, and then the property will be in compliance. Now, the tricky part with this was at one point they had said the diesel mechanic wasn't allowed, even though it's clearly shown in the site plan that's allowed. Then they said some other stuff was required. Then we had another meeting. They walked that back, said, well, no, that's not true. We're going to do this other stuff. So some of the people from the county have been really awesome and helpful, and some haven't. And it feels like they've been kind of going back and forth on what's required. So I think we're in an okay spot now to get this done, but it'll be interesting to see how it moves forward. So at first, my engineer, who originally did this site plan in 2014 for the previous owner, thought this would be a simple, easy process, maybe a couple $1,000s at the most of charges to me to redo this site plan. And then we had another meeting, and he said, well, everything's changed. We're going to have to charge you more than $10,000 for this because the county had changed the requirements. So we had another meeting and said, okay, we can reduce these costs again because what's required has changed a little bit. So I'm paying about $6,000 to have this site plan redone. And that's just the site plan, the engineer submitting some drainage stuff, some other work, some things like that are required. That does not count any of the dirt work, landscaping, other stuff that we'll have to do at some point, or changing the buildings around for the church. So the building inspectors did go through the church building. So that's one thing they requested. I'm like, sure, yeah, you guys can go through it. They went through it, didn't say that I was required to do anything at the moment. So that was good news. They said they wanted to make sure it was safe and everything was good. I think they had thought I had completely redone the whole building from wiring and heating and all that stuff. I'm like, no, I haven't. And then they said, well, we've seen your videos. We've seen what you've done. I'm like, okay, well, you can watch my videos and see we didn't change the heating or do major work in there at all. But as I said, some of the people at the county were nice, and some, well, we'll leave it at that. But we're at the point now, I've sent a retainer to the engineer. They're starting to work on their plans. And I've actually asked the guy who did my parking lot at my office to check into grading, what it would take there if he does that kind of work. He said he's going to check on it. Some of the other companies that were recommended to me are literally 6 months out to do grading work and dirt work and that type of work right now. So it's very difficult to get things done. And at one point, the county sent me a letter saying if I didn't get all this done in 30 days and start being in compliance, they were going to shut down the businesses and pursue further action. Again, that was kind of walked back in the next meeting. So I think some people understand we can't get things done like right away, especially when dealing with big commercial properties like this. And we have different things that are required for the property, and then we don't even know exactly what's required. So it's been interesting. We'll put it that way. So the plan right now is we're getting bids for the dirt work, the grading. The engineer is changing the site plan a little bit, taking out the truck washout, taking out some of the trees from the landscaping. So it had trees before. We don't need trees now. The county's more about water conservation than needing trees out there. And then just a few other minor changes as well on the site plan. But along with that, we have to submit a drainage letter, and we have to submit a traffic study, and we have to submit something else along with it that goes with the site plan. So we'll see how all of that goes and how it works. The church's lease is up in December. So at this point, there's no way we're going to get all of this done by December. So we could go to the church and say, hey, sorry, we're not going to renew your lease. We're going to attempt to find a tenant who's more fitting to this site plan, to this building. Or we could extend their lease. The church before had said they were probably looking for a different spot long term. This was just kind of a short-term solution because they got kicked out of their old place. So we'll make that decision here as it's coming up pretty quickly on that. The diesel mechanic loves it there. He's very happy with it. We don't have a tenant where the detailer was because they stopped paying rent, but I've been hesitant to rent to somebody at the moment with everything going on. The diesel mechanic has someone who wants to rent it, but that use is not approved yet either, so that would have to be added on the site plan and have to add some more uses there as well. So it's very weird how this is a church building right here. It was limited to just a grocery store, retail. Even the county said that was very weird how it was so limiting on its use. And for the future, you can add many more uses on that site plan. Because code allows all kinds of different uses. It's just that site plan that had limited the use to well below what the code and the zoning allowed, which is very strange. So we'll see what we can do. We're making some progress. I had talked to my engineer about another project, and we're in northern Colorado, if you're wondering. And he said that I think it was this county or the state. Someone else had been trying to start a business in a small town around here, not this town. And the county or the state, one of the two, had made them do a traffic study to see how their increased business flow would increase traffic. They had, instead of having 5 people at an office building, they're having 30 people at an office building. And the traffic narrative or study, whatever it was, showed that there'd be more traffic. And the state said, okay, that's going to have more wear and tear on our roads. It's kind of in a small town, in a rural setting. We have 2 miles of roads you're going to impact. We want you to redo and fix 2 miles of roads for us if you want to have this use. It was like $1.5 million worth of costs the state or county, I can't remember which one, was going to require this 30-person business do, because they're having 30 people there instead of 5 people there. And they thought that that increase in traffic would harm their roads enough for them to require $1.5 million in work. Another instance was where a company way out in the boondocks, where there's no people, very rural area here in Colorado, and I think it was I forgot what kind of company it was going to have some trucks going in and out, and the county or state was requiring them put in a stoplight literally 20 miles from the nearest town, out in the middle of nowhere where there's no houses, no cars, nothing. They wanted a stoplight because they're increasing the traffic from this, I don't know if it was a mine or a gravel pit or some, I'm not even sure. Just crazy what some of the stuff being required is. So we'll see how this goes. Mine has gotten better, but people wonder and talk about why real estate's so expensive and how supply and demand, and people blame investors for buying properties. If you want to know why real estate goes up in value, the number one cause is restrictions on development, building codes, making it difficult to build, making it difficult to remodel, making it difficult to redevelop. Those are the costs. I mean, if you have to spend $1.5 million on road work for your commercial business, all that cost is going to go back into the real estate and raise prices there. And so it's not a secret why prices are going up, but a lot of people want to ignore the real reasons why it does and blame other things. So this one could be worse. It could have been a lot harder to handle. Luckily, we're getting it to be a little easier, hopefully, and we're not under such a time crunch as we were before, which was pretty crazy because they had accused me of not communicating with them and not doing anything when I was in constant communication with them and working on this and trying to go through the steps. But I think we've got a lot of that figured out now. So that's the update on this property. We'll see what happens with it. After all that's said and done, I don't know if I want to sell it or keep it. We'll see. It'll have a lot of equity, maybe not a lot of cash flow because property taxes are pretty high. That's the story of a lot of properties in Colorado and higher priced markets is when you have rental properties, a lot of times you have a lot of equity, maybe not as much cash flow because the costs are so expensive on them. All right, and looping back to that first thing, I showed that truck. That was a mobile truck wash. That's what that was. And the guy who was doing the mobile truck washes was walking back to us saying, yes, that was his truck. It wasn't abandoned. But that tenant is also not supposed to have trucks in front of that building on this side, not washing trucks here. I've talked to him a number of times about it. So I need to talk to him again. And that's been frustrating on this property too. So love the likes, love the comments, love to hear what you think of this property. We'll have more updates on it and the other businesses and properties we've got. Hopefully things calm down a little bit with the county on this one as we move forward and get some work done. We'll see. All right, thanks for watching. Be back soon.